In keeping with the green movement that began in Europe in the 1970s and swept then with momentum through the 1980s, the Cordis Rose Company in northern Germany decided that in 1990 that from that point onwards they were not going to be spraying their roses with any chemical fungicides. That then led to a breeding program to develop roses that could naturally withstand the debilitating effects of rose diseases like black spot and mildew. Now, because those are objectives that we identify strongly with, we've been working closely at testing and trialing their varieties right here in our region. And this series, that's called the Kolorscape series of roses, have been particularly successful in our trials here at Overdevest Nurseries. We really like the fact that they're hardy varieties that will grow anywhere in our region, Zone 5. We also like the fact that these are short, compact growers. In this case, this one that's called Kolorscape Cheri only grows about 3 to 4 foot high by about the same wide. It's a variety that in springtime, when it produces its young growth first, comes out with this beautiful bronze purple foliage that, as you see, complements the flowers really nice. Now, when the buds open, they open with this bright coral pink color. Then the semi-double flowers will start to give off a really pleasant light fragrance. And then as they go through their development stages, you'll see that they gradually change color to this vibrant, I suppose, magenta pink color, so that you get this transition of color right through the life of the roses on the plant. What we've noticed here in our trials is that it tends to flower in flushes. It begins to flower first in early summer and then continues in flushes right through the whole of the growing period until the frosts of the autumn. Now, all roses like to grow in sunny conditions. This will tolerate some partially shaded conditions, but there it won't be quite as free flowering, and it will also perhaps be a little taller. So I would suggest that if you want to grow this at home in your garden, that you plant it out in a sunny, well-drained position. It's a nice, vigorous, strong-growing variety, and yet compact and bushy. In springtime, you could prune it back like you would do a normal rose. You don't have to be fussy about the pruning, and then you'll find that it'll produce plenty of this vigorous growth. When you get your plants and you put them in first, make sure to dig a good sized hole and then incorporate some planting compost, but there's not a need to fertilize it. You see, when we produce these plants already in the compost, we have a slow release formulation that will keep feeding it through this year. So the first year is just establishment. Then next spring, if you wish, you can go through and then fertilize it with just a general fertilizer, and that will stimulate plenty of young fresh growth that of course will lead to plenty of flowers during the season. It's also a good idea to mulch the beds during the summertime, or mulch them in spring so that it keeps them nice and moist during the summertime. And if we get any prolonged dry periods, you could also water them too. You'll find that this makes a lovely rose for growing as a specimen in a bed or a border. But I would suggest, since the flower power on this is so beautiful and so special, that you think, if you can, about planting it out in a multiple mass display. Somewhere perhaps like a rose bed or a bank or a hillside, somewhere where you're going to be able to enjoy the massed effect of all of these glorious flowers. Raised in 2001 by Tim Herman Cordis and selected in 2002, this variety underwent testing for 7 years before it was eventually released. And as I say, then we've been testing and trialing it here and making sure that it's a really good performer for this region too. This is Rose Kolorscape Cheri, a really beautiful, easy to grow and easy to care for rose.